The fork hit the plate like a gavel. Warren looked up from his meatloaf. His son Mason sat frozen, 12 years old and pale as February snow. The boy's mouth was half open, like he'd just realized what he'd said. Mom's friend slept in your spot again last night. The kitchen went quiet. Just the hum of the fluorescent light and the baseboard heater ticking. Outside, Warren's county truck sat in the driveway, crusted with road salt. He'd scraped ice off the windshield at 5:47 that morning, thinking about nothing more complicated than which routes needed attention. Linda's fork clattered down next. Her face drained white, then flushed red. Warren set his own fork down. Didn't look at his wife. Didn't look at his son. Just stared at the cooling meatloaf and thought about the tire tracks in his driveway. The ones that weren't his. He pushed back from the table and walked to the garage. The garage was cold enough to see his breath. Warren stood there in the dark, hand still on the doorknob, listening to Linda call through the door. Warren, wait, please, we need to talk. He didn't answer. Just walked to his workbench and sat down heavy on the stool. The tools hung on the pegboard like they always did. 40 years of accumulation, everything in its place. Socket wrenches organized by size. Screwdrivers lined up, Phillips and flathead. A man could build a whole life with his hands, one honest day at a time. Didn't mean the life couldn't fall apart. Warren? Linda's voice came muffled through the door. Honey, it's not what you think. He looked at his hands, calloused. Scarred across the knuckles from a trailer hitch, 2 winters back, salt-stained from the roads. These hands had provided everything. House paid off, food on the table, Mason's braces, Linda's car. Apparently that wasn't enough. Above him, Mason's window scraped open. Warren could hear it through the garage vent. His son's room was right over this spot. Then came the sound that broke something in his chest. Quiet crying, not loud, not dramatic, just a kid trying not to make noise. Warren closed his eyes. How long had Mason been carrying this? The memory came at him sideways, the way they do. Thanksgiving dinner just 3 months back. Mason pushing peas around his plate, not eating, not talking. Linda had said he was tired from basketball practice. Warren had believed her. Then Christmas. Mason's report card shoved in his backpack. D's and F's in subjects he used to ace. Teacher's note, clip it to it. Seems distracted, not himself. Warren had meant to talk to him about it. After the winter road season ended, after things settled down, things hadn't settled down, January, Mason stopped playing basketball in the driveway. That hoop had been Warren's gift for the boy's 10th birthday. All last winter you could hear the ball bouncing out there even after dark. This winter, nothing. The net hung there empty, snow piling up on the backboard. Warren had noticed. He'd just told himself it was the weather, the cold, puberty maybe. He hadn't let himself see what was right in front of him. His son had watched Brian leaving their house at dawn, had seen breakfast dishes for 2 when he came down in the morning, had carried it alone for 3 months through Thanksgiving turkey and Christmas presents and his 12th birthday cake. All because Warren had been too busy salting county roads to notice his own family coming apart. The door from the house opened. Mason stood there in his socks, eyes red. Warren looked at him. How long? Dad. How long, Mason? The boy's voice came out small. Since Thanksgiving. And Warren's jaw clenched so hard his teeth hurt. 3 months. Through Christmas. Through Mason's birthday on January 4th, when Linda had made that chocolate cake and smiled like everything was fine. I'm sorry, Mason whispered. I thought if I didn't say anything, it would stop. I thought I was protecting you. Warren wanted to say something, wanted to tell his son it wasn't his fault, that 12-year-olds shouldn't have to protect their fathers from the truth. But his throat had closed up. He just nodded. Mason wiped his face with his sleeve and went back inside. Warren gave it 10 minutes. Let the cold seep into his bones. Let his breath cloud in the dark. Then he went back into the house. Linda was in the living room, tissue in her hand. Her mascara had run. Could have been from crying. Could have been from rubbing at it. Hard to tell anymore what was real with her. It just happened twice, she said before he could speak. I swear, Warren. Brian helped with the furnace last month. Got snowed in, and I was lonely, and you're always working nights. Brian. The name tasted wrong in his mouth. He's just a friend. Was a friend. It won't happen again, I promise. I'll end it. I'll do anything to fix this. Warren stood there looking at her. 28 years of marriage. Mason was 2 when they'd met. Warren's first wife had died of cancer when the boy was just a baby. He'd thought Linda was a second chance, thought he was giving his son a mother. The tire tracks in the driveway, he said. How many times? She hesitated. A few, for coffee, to talk. Nothing like, how many times, Linda? I don't know, maybe 10, 15. The tissue twisted in her hands. She reached for him and he pulled back. I'm sleeping in Mason's room tonight, he said. Warren, and those insurance forms you wanted me to sign. I'll look at them tomorrow. And something flickered across her face. Just for a second. Irritation, maybe, or fear. Then it was gone, covered over with the crying again. Okay, she said quietly. Okay, whatever you need. And he went upstairs, got his pillow from their bed, his bed, the one he'd paid for, and carried it to Mason's room. The boy had already moved to the couch downstairs. Warren lay there, in the dark, listening to the house settle. Around 2 in the morning, he heard Linda's phone buzz. Once, twice, 3 times, he got up for water. The light was on under the living room door. He opened it quiet. Linda was on the couch, phone screen lighting up her face, typing fast, smiling at whatever she was reading. She didn't notice him standing there. Warren watched for 30 seconds. Then he closed the door, silent as snow. Warren was in the driveway at 5:47, same as always. Coffee thermos steaming in the cold. His breath made clouds in the February dark. The tire tracks were still there in the old snow, wider wheelbase than his county truck. Wider than Linda's sedan, too. He put his boot next to them. Luxury SUV size, probably. The kind with heated seats and that new car smell. Morning, Warren. He looked up. Phyllis Koenig was at her mailbox, bundled in her late husband's barn coat. She was always up early, church organist for 40 years, habit stuck even in retirement. Morning, Phyllis. She pulled out her mail, glanced at the tire tracks. That Audi sure parks here regular. Warren felt his stomach drop. Audi? Your wife's friend. Nice vehicle. Very punctual fellow. She looked at him over her reading glasses. Herb always said you were a good man, Warren. Good men deserve honesty. She went back inside before he could respond. At the county garage, Eddie the mechanic took one look at him and frowned. You okay, bud? Seems somewhere else. Fine. Yeah. Eddie didn't sound convinced. Well, wrote sheets on your clipboard. Stay safe out there. Warren nodded and climbed into his truck. But his hands shook on the wheel, and it took 3 tries to get the key in the ignition. Lunch break, he sat in his truck and thought about those insurance forms. Linda had mentioned them last night, just updating beneficiaries, she'd said. Real casual, like it was nothing. They weren't in the house. He'd looked that morning while she was in the shower, which meant she had them somewhere else. He got out and walked to her sedan in the driveway. The glove box opened with a soft click. There they were, 3 forms paper-clipped together, a sticky note on top in Linda's handwriting. Honey, sign tonight, just beneficiary updates. Warren pulled them out, started reading. The first form looked normal enough. Standard life insurance stuff. But the second one made him stop. Survivor benefits, redirect. Who's your asset trust? Not Linda's name, not Mason's name. Some company he'd never heard of. He flipped to the third form. Same thing. His signature line blank on all 3, but on one of them he could see faint pencil marks. Like someone had traced it, practiced it. Linda had worked at First National before Mason was born. 10 years as a teller, she knew signatures. His phone buzzed. Text from Linda. Did you sign those forms? Need them back today. Warren stared at the message. Then he folded the papers, put them in his jacket, and texted back. Lost them. We'll look tonight. 3 dots appeared on the screen. Disappeared, appeared again. They're important, really need them. He didn't respond, just started his truck and headed back to work. 3 days later, Linda cooked pot roast. Warren came home to the smell of it. Onions and carrots, the way she used to make it on Sundays. She'd set the table with the good plates, even lit a candle. I thought we could have a nice dinner, she said. All of us. Mason sat down without a word, kept his eyes on his plate. Linda touched Warren's arm as he pulled out his chair. I've been so stupid, she said. So lonely. You're always working nights, and Brian was just there. But it meant nothing, less than nothing. She'd done her makeup careful. Had on the perfume he'd bought her for their anniversary 2 years back. Warren cut into the pot roast. It was good. He'd forgotten she could cook like this. She hadn't made it in 2 years, maybe longer. I'll do anything, Linda said. Counseling, whatever you want. Please, Warren. 28 years. That has to count for something. He wanted to believe her. God help him, he wanted to. Because what was the alternative? Divorce at 64? Starting over? Explaining to people at church why his wife had... No, he couldn't even think the words. We'll figure it out, he heard himself say. Linda's face brightened. She reached across the table and squeezed his hand. Mason excused himself early, barely touched his food. That night, Linda said she'd sleep on the couch. Give him space. Warren went to Mason's room. The boy was bunking with him now, sleeping bag on the floor. At 2:17 in the morning, Warren got up for water. Light under the living room door. He opened it, quiet as he could. Linda was on the couch, phone in her hands. The screen lit her face blue in the dark. Her thumbs moved fast, typing something. Then she smiled. Actually smiled at whatever she was reading. Warren stood there for 30 seconds. She never looked up. Never noticed him. He closed the door, went back to Mason's room, lay there staring at the ceiling until his alarm went off at 5. In the kitchen, He found the insurance forms where he'd left them, tucked inside the phone book in the junk drawer. He took them to his truck. Tomorrow, he'd show them to Dottie, at the courthouse. She'd worked in the county clerk's office for 38 years. If something was wrong with these papers, she'd know. The coffee maker beeped. Warren poured his thermos, grabbed his keys. Behind him, Linda's bedroom door opened. "Warren, did you find those forms?" He looked at her. She was in her robe, hair perfect like she'd just fixed it, at 5:30 in the morning. "Still looking," he said. Her smile didn't reach her eyes. The courthouse diner smelled like burnt coffee and bacon grease. Dottie Pelham sat in the corner booth, reading glasses perched on her nose, looking at something on her phone. Warren slid in across from her, set the insurance forms on the table. "Morning, Dottie." She glanced up, saw his face, put the phone down. "What's wrong?" He pushed the papers toward her. "You ever hear of something called Who's Your Asset Trust?" Her expression changed, went from curious to careful in about 2 seconds. "Where'd you see that name?" "These forms. Linda wanted me to sign them. Said they're just beneficiary updates." Dottie picked up the papers, read through them slow, then she went real still. "Warren," she said quietly, "where's Linda this morning?" "Home, I guess." "Why?" "Because we need to go to my office. Right now." Dottie's cubicle was in the basement of the county building, file cabinets floor to ceiling, everything labeled in her neat handwriting. She pulled his personnel file from a drawer, flipped through it, and laid 2 documents side by side. "These are your real beneficiary forms? The ones on file with the county?" Warren looked. His signature from 6 years ago, when he'd updated everything after his mama died. Linda listed as primary beneficiary, Mason as secondary. "Now look at these." Dottie pointed to the forms he'd brought. Same signature lines. But the beneficiaries were different. Who's Your Asset Trust? Some company he'd never heard of. "What is it?" he asked. Dottie typed on her computer, pulled up the Indiana Secretary of State website, clicked through a few screens. "Who's Your Asset Trust? Registered December 8th. She turned the monitor toward him. "Managing partner, Brian Callahan." The name hit Warren like a fist. He sat back hard in the chair. I know who it is," Dottie said. Her voice had gone cold. "Linda's been asking about him at church coffee. Introduced him around Thanksgiving. Said he was an insurance agent helping with some paperwork." Warren couldn't breathe right. The cubicle felt too small. What were they trying to do? Dottie pulled up another screen. His pension information. 40 years of service. Early retirement eligible at 62. Full retirement at 65? "Your survivor benefits," she said. "If something happened to you, Linda gets $3,400 a month. For life." Warren did the math in his head. $40,000 a year. For maybe 20, 30 years, if Linda lived to 80? Jesus. But if you'd signed these forms," Dottie tapped the fake documents, "those benefits would have gone to Brian's company instead. Linda would have gotten nothing. You would have gotten nothing. But $500,000. Give or take." Dottie looked at him over her glasses. "Warren, Linda worked at First National for 10 years. She knows how signatures work." He stared at the forms, at the signature line where his name should have been. One of them had faint pencil marks underneath, like someone had traced his signature, practiced getting the loops right. "How many did they forge?" he asked. Dottie's face told him before her words did. 3 that I can see. Maybe more. But you never signed anything, right?" "No. Something felt wrong, so, he stopped. I brought them to you instead." "Good." She gathered the papers into a folder. "I'm making copies of everything. You're going to need them." "For what?" "A lawyer, Warren. This isn't marriage problems anymore. This is fraud." He sat in his truck in the courthouse parking lot for 40 minutes, engine running for heat. Snow started falling around 11, covering the windshield 1 flake at a time. 40 years. He'd worked through pneumonia, through his mama's funeral, through the ice storm of '09 when half the county lost power and he'd stayed out for 36 hours straight, keeping the roads clear so ambulances could get through. He'd turned down 2 promotions because they would have meant moving, and he didn't want to pull Mason out of his school. He'd miss basketball games and school plays and parent-teacher conferences because someone had to work the night shift when the snow came. And they'd been planning to steal it. All of it. The affair, that was one thing. That hurt, sure, hurt like hell. But this was different. This was Linda and her boyfriend sitting down with paperwork and a calculator, figuring out how to take 40 years of Warren's life and turn it into their payday. The snow covered the windshield completely. He couldn't see out anymore. That seemed about right. His phone rang. Mason's school, the nurse. "Mr. Hackett?" Mason threw up in class. "Can you come get him?" Warren cleared the windshield with his wiper blades, put the truck in gear. "On my way." Mason was in the nurse's office, sitting on the cot with a trash can between his knees. He didn't look sick, just tired, like he hadn't slept in 3 months, because he hadn't. Warren signed him out. They drove home in silence. Mason stared out the window at the falling snow. In the driveway, the boy finally spoke. "Is it because I told?" Warren turned off the engine. "What?" "Everything. Mom crying, you sleeping in my room, nobody talking. Is it my fault?" "No." Warren's voice came out harder than he meant. "No, Mason. It's because your mother and Brian are liars." Mason's chin wobbled. "Are you gonna leave?" The question hit Warren sideways. He'd been thinking about it, sure. Last night, driving his salt routes, he'd passed the exit to I-65 South. Florida was 3 days away. He could send money for Mason, visit on holidays, start over somewhere warm where nobody knew him. But looking at his son now, 12 years old, carrying the weight of adult secrets, Warren knew he couldn't do that. "No," he said. "I'm not going anywhere. This is my house. You're my son. That doesn't change." Mason wiped his eyes, nodded. They sat there for a minute, watching snow pile up on the hood. "Dad?" "Yeah?" "I should have told you sooner." Warren looked at him, really looked. Saw the dark circles under his eyes, the way his shoulders hunched like he was trying to disappear. "You were trying to protect me," Warren said. "That makes you a good kid, even if—" His throat closed up. "Even if the way you did it was hard." Mason grabbed the door handle. "I'm gonna go lie down." "Yeah, okay." Warren watched his son trudge through the snow to the front door. Inside, Linda's car was gone. There was a note on the counter in her handwriting. "At my sister's for a few days. Need space to think." Warren crumpled the note, looked around the kitchen. Mason's backpack dumped by the door, homework spilling out, dishes in the sink from breakfast, coffee pot still on from this morning, the coffee burned to sludge. This was his house. He'd paid for every brick, every nail, every light fixture, 40 years of overtime and snow routes and missed Thanksgivings. And they tried to steal it. He pulled out his phone, called Dottie. "I need that lawyer," he said. "Your nephew. The one who does family law?" "I'll call him tonight," Dottie said. "Warren, you're doing the right thing." And he wasn't sure about that. But he knew he couldn't keep living like this, frozen, paralyzed, pretending everything was fine, while his wife texted her boyfriend at 2 a.m. Mason appeared in the kitchen doorway. "Dad, you hungry?" Warren looked at his son, thought about teaching him what it meant to be a man, what it meant to stand up even when standing up was hard. "Yeah," he said. "Let's figure out dinner together." They made scrambled eggs and toast. Mason burned the first batch, but the second one came out okay. They ate standing at the counter, not talking much, just being there. Outside, the snow kept falling. The tire tracks in the driveway started filling in. Tomorrow, Warren would start fighting back. Tonight, he'd make sure his son knew one thing. They were going to be okay, maybe not the same, maybe not what they'd been, but okay. 2 weeks went by like walking through mud. Linda came back after 3 days, didn't apologize, didn't explain, just moved her things to the couch and acted like sleeping in separate rooms was normal. Like their family hadn't blown apart over meatloaf and a 12-year-old's truth. Warren kept to Mason's room. The boy had taken to the couch in the basement, said he liked it down there. But Warren knew better. Mason was giving him space. A kid shouldn't have to do that. Mornings, Warren left at 5:45. Linda pretended to be asleep. Mason made his own breakfast, cereal at first, then toast, then eventually eggs that only stuck to the pan half the time. Evenings, Warren worked late, took every overtime shift the county offered. When he came home, Linda would have dinner on the table. They'd eat in silence. Mason would disappear to his room. Linda would clean up, then retreat to the couch with her phone. Warren would lie in Mason's bed, staring at the ceiling, listening to her phone buzz. Once, twice, 3 times a night. He should have done something. Filed papers. Called that lawyer Dottie mentioned. Something. But he couldn't make himself move. Sunday morning, Warren went to church alone. Linda said she had a headache. Mason said he had homework. The Methodist church sat on the corner of Main and 4th, white clapboard with a steeple that needed paint. Warren had been going there 40 years. Knew every creaking board, every hymn by heart. He took his usual spot, 3rd pew from the back, right side. Coffee hour after the service was in the basement. Folding tables with store-bought cookies and a big percolator that Mrs. Henderson had donated in 1987. Warren poured himself a cup, black, no sugar, and tried not to notice the whispers. Mrs. Henderson and Mrs. Kowalski stood by the cookies, heads bent together. When Warren walked past, their conversation stopped. Mrs. Henderson looked away, quick. Mrs. Kowalski studied her coffee like it held the secrets of the universe. Phyllis appeared at his elbow. "Cream, right?" "Black's fine." "Suit yourself." She dumped cream in her own cup, stirred it slow. "How's Mason doing?" "Okay, I think." Kids are resilient." She took a sip. How about you? Warren didn't answer, just drank his coffee and tried not to feel like everyone in the basement was watching him. In the parking lot afterward, Sheriff Hendricks caught him by his truck. Hendricks was Warren's second cousin on his mama's side. Good man. Fair. Warren. Sheriff. Heard you might be having some trouble. Hendricks kept his voice low. I'm around if you need. He didn't say what kind of trouble. Didn't need to. Warren nodded. His throat was too tight to speak. Hendricks clapped him on the shoulder once and walked away. Everyone knew. The whole damn town knew his wife was sleeping with someone else, and Warren was just, what, living with it? Sleeping in his son's room like a guest in his own house? He sat in his truck for 10 minutes before he could make himself drive home. Night routes were worse. Warren volunteered for the 6 p.m. to 2 a.m. shift 3 times that week. Told Eddie it was for the overtime. Eddie didn't argue, but his face said he knew better. Out on the county roads, it was just Warren, in the dark, in the snow coming down steady. The salt spreader rattled in the truck bed. The radio played low, old country, songs his daddy used to listen to. Your Cheatin' Heart came on. Warren snapped it off. He drove Route 19 north, then swung back on County Road 400, past empty fields and farmhouses with lights in the windows, families inside, eating dinner, watching TV, living normal lives where wives didn't lie and 12-year-olds didn't have to keep secrets. Near Brownsburg, he passed the exit to I-65 south. His hand twitched toward the turn signal. Florida was 3 days away, maybe 4 if he stopped to sleep. He could find work. Counties everywhere needed road crews. Send money back for Mason. Visit on Christmas and birthdays? Just drive. Keep driving until Indiana was in the rearview mirror, and his name didn't mean that guy whose wife cheated. But Mason's voice was in his head. Are you gonna leave? Warren's hand dropped from the turn signal. He drove past the exit, kept the route, did his job, went home when his shift ended. Saturday morning, he woke to the smell of eggs and toast. Mason was in the kitchen, 2 plates on the table, coffee brewing. The boy had learned to work the machine somehow. Warren had meant to teach him, but Mason had figured it out on his own. Is this okay? Mason asked, like he needed permission to feed himself. Warren sat down. Yeah, it's good. They ate in silence. The eggs were a little runny, but the toast was perfect. Mason had even buttered it the way Warren liked, right to the edges. Through the window, Warren could see Mason's basketball hoop, snow-covered, hadn't been touched in months. How long are we doing this? Mason asked. Warren looked at his son, 12 years old, making breakfast for his father because nobody else would, sleeping on a basement couch because his parents couldn't be in the same room. I'm working on it, Warren said. Mason nodded, cleared the plates, disappeared to his room. Warren's room, really, but Mason never complained. Warren sat at the table alone, stared at his coffee going cold. He needed to do something, file papers, call that lawyer, get out of this frozen hell where every day felt exactly like the last. But the shame of it, telling a stranger his wife preferred another man, that he'd been stupid enough to almost sign away 40 years of work, it kept him stuck. The doorbell rang. Warren opened it. Phyllis stood there with a Tupperware container in her hands and something tucked under her arm. A notebook. Blue cover. Spiral bound. Got a minute? She asked. Warren looked at the notebook. His pulse quickened. Yeah, he said. Come in. Phyllis set the Tupperware on the kitchen table. Goulash, from the smell of it, paprika and tomato and beef. Made extra, she said. Figured you and Mason could use a proper meal. Thanks, Phyllis. She pulled out the notebook, set it on the table between them. Her handwriting covered the pages, neat, precise, the kind you learned in school back when penmanship mattered. Warren sat down, opened it. December 1st, 11:14 p.m. 11:37 p.m., Audi SUV, license plate HNT4729, clear evening, 28 degrees, Warren working late route. December 8th, 9:33 p.m., 6:12 a.m., same vehicle, light snow, Warren on overnight shift. December 15th, 8:02 p.m., 1:45 a.m., same vehicle, ice storm, Warren on emergency crew, 3 months of entries. Dates, times, weather conditions, Brian's license plate number, how long he stayed. When Warren was working, Warren's hands started shaking. Why? He asked. Phyllis sat down across from him. Herb always said, good men get trampled if nobody's watching their backs. I was watching yours. But you, Warren couldn't find the words. You documented it for 3 months. I kept track for prayer purposes, she said. Her voice was matter-of-fact, like she was discussing the weather. Figured you'd need it eventually. Men don't always see what's in front of them. Women do. Warren flipped through the pages. January. February. The entries kept going, right up to last week. Before Mason's confession at dinner, she'd known. All this time, Phyllis had known. Does everyone... He stopped, started over. Does the whole town know? Some. Phyllis folded her hands on the table. The ones who matter know you're a good man. The ones who don't matter aren't worth worrying about. She stood up, pushed the goulash toward him. Eat something, Warren. You're getting thin. And that notebook's yours now. Do with it what you need to. At the door, she paused. One more thing. Dottie Pelham called me yesterday, said to tell you her nephew does family law. Tom Pelham won't charge much. She left before Warren could respond. He sat there staring at the notebook. 3 months of evidence. Times and dates and license plate numbers. The kind of documentation that would hold up in court. His phone rang. Dottie's name on the screen. Warren, you got a minute? Yeah. My nephew Tom can see you Monday at 2. Can you make that? Warren looked at the notebook, at Phyllis's careful handwriting, documenting every betrayal. I don't know if I want lawyers involved yet. Dottie's voice went hard, the way it did when someone tried to file paperwork wrong at the county office. Warren, they forged your signature to steal your pension. That's not marriage problems. That's felony fraud. I know, but nothing. You think they're gonna stop now? Linda knows you found those papers. Brian knows you didn't sign. They're gonna try something else? Warren's stomach went cold. What do you mean? I mean, predators don't give up just because their first plan failed. She paused. Tom found something else. Brian tried this before, 2 years ago, widow in Bloomington, Patricia Brennan, same scheme, same company name, everything. Jesus. She caught it in time, kicked him out, but she didn't press charges, didn't want the publicity, the shame of it. Dottie's voice softened. Warren, she'll testify if you file charges. She called Tom yesterday, said she should have stopped Brian when she had the chance. Warren closed his eyes. Saw Patricia Brennan in his mind, some woman he'd never met, living 2 counties over, carrying the same shame he was carrying now. The same question. What did I do wrong? How did I not see it? Monday at 2, he said. I'll be there. Good. Dottie hung up. Warren sat at the table, Phyllis's notebook open in front of him. 3 months of evidence. And somewhere in Bloomington, a widow who'd been through the same thing. Brian wasn't improvising. This was what he did. Found lonely women, wormed his way in, went after their money. Warren was just the latest mark. The shame of it burned. But underneath the shame was something else, something colder, anger. Upstairs, Mason's door opened. The boy came down in his socks, saw Warren at the table. You okay, Dad? Yeah, come here a minute. Mason sat down. Warren closed the notebook, but not before the boy saw Phyllis's handwriting. What's that? Evidence. Warren's voice came out rougher than he meant. For a lawyer. Mason went quiet, picked at a splinter in the table. Dad, I need to ask you something. Okay, should I have told you sooner? Like, in November when I first saw Brian's car here? Warren looked at his son, 12 years old, shoulders hunched like he was waiting for punishment. Why didn't you? I thought if I stayed quiet, it would stop. Mason's voice got small. Or you wouldn't get hurt. I was trying to protect you. By carrying it alone for 4 months? Mason nodded. Tears started, but he wiped them away quick. Warren reached across the table, put his hand on his son's shoulder. He wasn't good at this. The emotional stuff, the talking. Carol had been better at it. Linda had pretended to be. You were trying to do the right thing, he said. That's what matters. Even if... He stopped, started over. Sometimes staying quiet feels like keeping the peace. But silence can make things worse? Are you mad at me? No. Warren squeezed his shoulder. I'm proud you finally told the truth. That took guts. Mason wiped his face. What happens now? Monday, I meet with a lawyer. After that, Warren looked at the notebook. At 3 months of his wife's betrayal documented in Phyllis's neat handwriting. After that, we'll see. Mason nodded, got up to leave. At the doorway, he turned back. Dad, are you gonna fight? Warren thought about Patricia Brennan in Bloomington. Thought about the next woman Brian would target if someone didn't stop him. Thought about Mason, learning what it meant to stand up when standing up was hard. Yeah, he said. I think I am. That night, Warren couldn't sleep. Lay in Mason's bed, staring at the ceiling, thinking about Monday. About sitting in a lawyer's office and explaining how his wife had tried to steal his pension, how he'd almost signed the papers, how stupid he'd been. Around midnight, he heard Mason get up. The boy padded into the room, stood in the doorway. Can't sleep either? Warren asked. No. Mason came in, sat on the edge of the bed. I keep thinking about what you said, about staying quiet, making things worse. Yeah. I should have told you in November, before Thanksgiving, before Christmas, before... Mason. No, listen. The boy's voice shook. I watched you go to work every day, watched you come home tired, watched Mom lie to your face, and I didn't say anything because I was scared. Scared of what? That you'd leave. That the family would break up, that it would be my fault for telling. Warren sat up, looked at his son in the dark. It's not your fault, he said. Your mother and Brian did this, not you. All you did was stop pretending everything was okay. Mason wiped his eyes. I was trying to protect you. I know. Warren's throat went tight. But I'm the parent. I'm supposed to protect you, not the other way around. They sat there in the dark for a while, neither one sleeping, just being there together. Finally, Mason asked, What are you going to do? Monday, I talked to the lawyer. Then we figure out the next step. Warren looked at his son. But whatever happens, you and me, we're going to be okay. Mason nodded, went back to the couch. Warren lay there listening to the house settle, thinking about Monday, about fighting back, about teaching his son that good men don't let people steal from them, even if those people are family. Tom Pelham's office was above the hardware store on Main Street. One room, really. Desk by the window, filing cabinets along the wall, diplomas from Indiana University Law School, in frames that needed dusting. Tom was younger than Warren expected, maybe 45. Dottie's nephew had her eyes, sharp, didn't miss much. Mr. Hackett, have a seat. Warren sat down, set Phyllis's notebook on the desk. Then the forged insurance forms, then the copies Dottie had made of his real personnel file. Tom went through them slow, reading each page twice. His expression didn't change, but his jaw got tighter. Okay, he said finally. Let's talk about what we're dealing with here. He turned his computer screen toward Warren, pulled up the Indiana Criminal Code. Forgery. That's a level 6 felony, 2.5 years, possible fine up to $10,000. He clicked to another page. Fraud, theft, conspiracy if we can prove they planned it together. Warren's mouth went dry. Criminal charges? That's up to you, but yeah, this is criminal territory. Tom tapped the forged documents. They tried to steal $400,000 from you. That's not a civil disagreement. That's a crime. I just want a divorce. I want them gone. Okay, we can do that. Tom made a note on his legal pad. But here's what you need to understand. In Indiana, marital assets get split 50-50 unless there's cause for fault-based divorce. Adultery is cause. So is fraud. Meaning you keep the house, full pension, no alimony. She leaves with whatever personal property she brought into the marriage. Tom looked at him. But you have to be willing to present this evidence. In court, if it comes to that. Warren thought about standing in front of a judge, explaining how his wife had slept with another man, how they'd tried to steal his pension, how stupid he'd been. What about Mason? He asked. He's 12, old enough for the judge to consider his preference, but not old enough to choose outright. Tom's voice softened. Does Linda want custody? I don't know, she hasn't mentioned it. Has she been in contact with Mason since this started? Warren thought about it. 2 weeks since the fork drop dinner, Linda and Mason in the same house. But she hadn't asked about his homework, hadn't asked about school, hadn't made him breakfast or checked if he was okay. No, Warren said. She hasn't. Tom made another note, then he pulled up something else on his computer. Your aunt mentioned a previous victim, Bloomington. I did some digging. He turned the screen again. Patricia Brennan, widow. Brian befriended her in 2020. Got her to name him as beneficiary on her life insurance. She caught it when her daughter reviewed the paperwork. Did she press charges? No, she just wanted him gone. Tom leaned back in his chair. But she'll testify now. I talked to her yesterday. She said, he checked his notes. She said, if I'd stopped him then maybe he wouldn't have hurt anyone else. Warren felt something shift in his chest. Patricia Brennan hadn't just been conned. She'd been carrying guilt, thinking she should have done more. She'll testify? Yes, and there might be others. I'm looking into it. Tom closed his laptop. Warren, here's the truth. Brian Callahan is a predator. He targets lonely women with assets, gets close, goes after their money. He's probably done this more than twice. Jesus. So you have a choice. Civil divorce, quiet, private, you get your assets and move on. Or criminal charges, public, messy, but you stop him from doing this to someone else. Warren looked at the notebook, at Phyllis's handwriting. 3 months of documentation. All those nights she'd sat by her window keeping track, watching his back. He thought about Patricia Brennan in Bloomington, about the next widow or divorcee Brian would target, about Mason, watching to see what his father would do. I want to talk to him first, Warren said. Brian, face to face. Tom frowned. That's not usually. I want him to know I know. I want to see his face when I show him the evidence. Warren's voice came out harder than he meant, Then we'll decide about charges. Tom studied him for a long moment. Okay, but if you do that, I want the sheriff on standby, and I want you to record it. He won't get violent. He's too smart for that. Maybe, but I've seen men do stupid things when they're cornered. When Tom pulled out a business card, call me after you talk to him. We'll figure out next steps. Warren spent Tuesday building the case. At his kitchen table, he made a timeline. November, Brian first appears. December, who's your asset trust registered? January, forged insurance forms. February, Mason's confession. He checked Linda's car registration. Found Brian listed as co-signer on her lease from January. Warren had never approved that. Never even been asked. He photographed everything. The forged signatures. Phyllis's notebook. The Hoosier Asset Trust registration from the Secretary of State website. Sheriff Hendricks stopped by that evening. Warren had called him, explained what he was planning. Sunday at 2, Warren said. I'm going to confront him with the evidence. Hendricks nodded. I'll be 5 minutes away. You call if it goes sideways. It won't. Maybe. But save my number just in case. Hendricks looked around the kitchen. Where's Linda? Upstairs. We're not talking much. Probably for the best. Hendricks headed for the door, then paused. Warren, you're doing the right thing. It don't feel like it now, but you are. Saturday night, Warren laid the documents on the coffee table, arranged them in order, forged signatures first, then Phyllis's notebook, then the Bloomington case file Tom had given him. Linda came downstairs, saw him organizing papers. What's all that? Getting ready for tomorrow. For what? Warren looked at her. Brian's coming over, 2 o'clock. We're going to discuss some paperwork. Her face went white. Warren, if this is about those insurance forms, I can explain. 2 o'clock tomorrow, he said. Be here or don't, up to you. She opened her mouth, closed it, went back upstairs without another word. Mason appeared in the hallway. Dad, you want me to stay at Phyllis's tomorrow? No, stay in your room. Let me handle it. Okay, Mason hesitated. You sure about this? Warren looked at the evidence spread across his coffee table. 40 years of work, 3 months of betrayal, a widow in Bloomington who'd carried guilt for 2 years. Yeah, he said. I'm sure. He pulled out his phone, texted Brian. Need to discuss some paperwork. Sunday 2 p.m. at my place. Important. 3 dots appeared. Disappeared. Appeared again. Sure thing, Warren. Happy to help. Warren read it twice. That confidence. That smooth, helpful tone. Not for long. Sunday 1:58 p.m. Warren stood at the living room window, coffee mug in his hand. The Audi pulled into the driveway. Clean, expensive. Everything Warren's salt-crusted county truck wasn't. Brian got out wearing a polo shirt and khakis. Cologne probably cost more than Warren's winter coat. He checked his phone, smiled at something, then walked toward the house. Warren opened the door before Brian could knock. Warren. Brian extended his hand. Good to see you. Warren didn't shake, just stepped aside. Come in. Linda was on the couch, tissue already in her hand. She'd been crying, or making it look like she had. Hard to tell anymore. Brian sat in the armchair, casual, comfortable, like he'd sat there 100 times before. Maybe he had. So, Brian leaned forward, hands clasped. Linda mentioned something about paperwork? I'm happy to help with whatever you need. Warren set his coffee down, picked up the first document from the table. These. He laid the insurance forms in front of Brian. The ones you and Linda tried to get me to sign. Brian's smile held steady. Oh, those. Yeah, those were just routine beneficiary updates. Linda asked me to help, since I work in insurance. Warren put down the Hoosier Asset Trust registration. Your company filed December 8th, 1 week after you started sleeping with my wife. The smile faltered, just a flicker, but Warren saw it. Warren, I think there's been some confusion. No confusion. Warren's voice stayed level. Here's what's confusing to me. Why you'd try to steal $400,000 from a man whose bed you're sleeping in. Brian sat back. His face changed. The friendly insurance agent disappearing. Something harder underneath. Warren, you're upset, I understand. But you need to calm down and think about what you're saying. I'm calm. Warren put down Phyllis's notebook. 3 months. Every time you came to my house, dates, times, your license plate number, my neighbor kept track. Brian stared at the notebook. His jaw tightened. That's stalking. That woman has no right. She has every right. It's her property. She can watch whatever she wants from her window. Warren sat down across from him. You want to know what else is interesting? The signature on these forms. He laid down the comparison dot he had made. Real signature next to the forged attempts. Someone practiced signing my name. 3 times. Got the loops almost right, but the pressure's wrong. Warren looked at Linda. You worked at First National for 10 years. You know, signatures. Linda's face crumpled. Warren, we weren't trying to. Yes, you were. He put down the last document. Patricia Brennan, Bloomington. You tried the same thing 2 years ago. Same company name, same scheme. She'll testify. Brian stood up fast. The chair rocked back. This is ridiculous. You can't prove any of. Sit down. Something in Warren's voice made Brian stop, made him look at Warren like he was seeing him for the first time. Warren didn't raise his voice. Didn't need to. You can leave right now, or I can call Sheriff Hendricks. He's my cousin. He's 5 minutes away. Your choice. Brian grabbed his coat. You know what? This is insane. Linda, let's go. She's not going anywhere with you. This is between married people. Footsteps from the kitchen. Everyone turned. Mason stood in the doorway. He had a plate in his hands. Had been making lunch. The plate had 2 eggs on it. The boy set it down on the counter, careful and quiet. Then he looked at Brian. You ate our food, Mason said. His voice came out steady, clear. You sat at our table. You lied to me. Brian tried the smile again. Didn't quite make it. Kid, this is adult business. You're a liar. Mason's hands balled into fists. Mom said you were helping with the furnace, then with paperwork, then with insurance. But you were just stealing. The words landed like stones in still water. Simple, true, devastating. Linda made a sound, half sob, half denial. Mason, you don't understand. I understand fine. Mason looked at his mother. I've understood since Thanksgiving. I just didn't say anything because I thought I was protecting Dad. Warren felt something crack open in his chest. Pride and heartbreak all mixed together. Brian's face had gone red. He pointed at the door. I don't have to listen to this from a child. Then don't. Warren stood up. Leave, now. And if you contact Linda, if you contact me, if you come within a mile of this house, I file criminal charges tomorrow morning. Fraud, forgery, theft, all of it. You're bluffing. Am I? Warren gathered the documents, tapped them straight. Tom Pelham's handling my case. Patricia Brennan's ready to testify. And I've got 40 years of credit with this county. Who do you think they'll believe? Brian stared at him. The masks were all gone now. The friendly insurance agent, the helpful guy, the smooth talker. What was left looked smaller, meaner. This isn't over, Brian said. Yeah, it is. Brian grabbed the doorknob, turned back one last time. You think you're some kind of hero? You're just a sad old man who couldn't keep his wife happy. Get out. Of my house? Brian left. The door slammed hard enough to rattle the windows. His Audi peeled out of the driveway, tires spitting gravel. Warren stood there, listening to the engine fade. His hands were shaking, not from fear, from adrenaline, maybe, or relief that it was finally done. Linda was sobbing on the couch. Real tears this time, Warren thought. Or maybe not, hard to tell. I didn't know, she said between sobs. I didn't know it would go this far. Brian said we'd be together, that you'd be taken care of, that the paperwork was just... Stop. Or Warren's voice came out flat. Tired. Just stop, Linda. I made a mistake. You forged my signature. 3 times. He looked at her, really looked. Tried to find the woman he'd married 28 years ago. She wasn't there. Maybe she'd never been there. Pack a bag, he said. Be gone by morning. Warren, please. Morning, Linda. He turned away, found Mason still standing in the kitchen doorway. The boy's shoulders were shaking. Warren walked over, pulled his son into an awkward hug. First time in months. Mason grabbed onto him like he was drowning. You didn't have to do that? Warren said quietly. Yeah, I did. Mason's voice was muffled against Warren's shirt. He was lying. Warren held on, felt his son's heart beat against his chest. Thought about what it must have cost Mason to speak up, to call out a grown man in front of his mother. You did good, Warren said. They stood there in the kitchen for a long time. Linda's crying gradually quieted. Eventually Warren heard her go upstairs, heard drawers opening, closing, the sound of packing. Mason pulled back, wiped his eyes. What happens now? Now? Warren looked around the kitchen. His kitchen. The house he'd paid for with 40 years of overtime, and night shifts, and working through blizzards. Now we figure out what comes next, you and me. Mason nodded, picked up his plate of eggs. They were cold by now, but he ate them anyway. Warren poured himself more coffee, sat at the table. Through the window, he could see Phyllis in her yard, pretending to check her mailbox, making sure everything was okay. He raised his mug toward her. She nodded and went back inside. Upstairs, Linda's footsteps moved back and forth. In the morning, she'd be gone. The divorce papers would get filed. The lawyers would handle the rest. But right now, in this moment, Warren's house was quiet. His son was safe. The evidence was organized in neat stacks on the coffee table. He'd done it, stood up, fought back. It didn't feel like victory yet, more like exhaustion. But underneath the exhaustion was something else. Peace, maybe, or the beginning of it. Mason finished his eggs, started to clear his plate. Leave it, Warren said. I'll get it later. You sure? Yeah, just sit with me for a minute. Mason sat. They didn't talk, just listened to the house settling around them, to the ordinary sounds of an ordinary Sunday afternoon. Tomorrow would bring lawyers and paperwork and difficult conversations, but tomorrow could wait. Tonight, they'd survived. That was enough. 2 months later, Warren stood on his porch with coffee and watched the robins come back. April morning, the kind where you could smell dirt thawing and see green pushing through dead grass. His salt truck sat in the driveway, retired now. County had thrown him a small party. Cake from the grocery store, handshakes, Eddie making a speech about Warren being the most reliable man he'd ever worked with. 40 years, done. His phone rang, Tom Pelham. Morning, Warren. Got some news. Good or bad? Depends on your perspective. Tom's voice had that lawyer tone, measured, careful. Brian Callahan's been charged. Fraud, forgery, attempted theft. He took a plea deal yesterday. Warren set his coffee down. What kind of deal? 3 years probation. Restitution to all victims. Permanent record. He can't work in financial services anymore. Tom paused. It's not prison, but it's something. How many victims? 5 that we know of. You, Patricia Brennan, and 3 others who came forward after they heard about your case. 2 in Indianapolis, 1 in Fort Wayne. All the same pattern. Lonely women, asset protection scheme, forged documents. Warren thought about those women, strangers he'd never meet, but they'd come forward because someone had finally stopped Brian. What about Linda? Divorce finalized last week. You got the papers, right? Yeah. Warren had them in his truck. Hadn't looked at them since they arrived. House is mine? House, pension, everything, no alimony. She didn't contest any of it. Tom's voice softened. She moved to her sister's in Terre Haute. Hasn't been in contact. Not with me. She called Mason a few times in March. He talks to her, but... Warren looked through the screen door. Mason was at the kitchen table. Homework spread out, pencil moving across paper. It's different now. That's normal? Kids processing? Tom cleared his throat. One more thing. Patricia Brennan wanted me to pass along a message. She said you gave me courage to finish what I started. Thank you. Warren's throat went tight. Tell her she's welcome. After they hung up, Warren stayed on the porch, watched the robins hop across the lawn, thought about 5 women who'd been targeted by the same man, about how many more there might have been if someone hadn't finally said enough. He hadn't set out to be a hero, had just wanted his house back, his dignity, his life. But sometimes that was enough. Saturday morning, Mason met him in the driveway with a socket wrench. You said we'd change the truck oil today. Warren looked at his son. Taller than 2 months ago, or maybe Warren just noticed it now. The dark circles under Mason's eyes were gone. He'd made honor roll in March. Started eating breakfast without Warren having to ask. Yeah, let's do it. They worked in silence mostly. Warren, showing Mason where to put the drain pan, how to check the filter, the right way to pour new oil without spilling. Not too fast, Warren said. Let it find its own level. Mason nodded, concentrated like he was defusing a bomb. Got it right on the first try. Good, Warren said. You're a natural. They were washing their hands with the hose when Phyllis called over the fence. You 2 want lunch? Made extra kielbasa. They ate on her porch, grilled sausage and sauerkraut and rye bread. Phyllis asked about Mason's classes, about Warren's retirement. Didn't mention Linda or Brian or any of it. Just normal conversation, like they'd been having lunch on Saturdays for years. Maybe they would now. After they left, Mason asked, Does she do that for everyone? Do what? The food, the checking in. Warren thought about Phyllis's notebook. 3 months of keeping watch. The way she'd appeared at his elbow at church coffee when everyone else was whispering. No, he said. Just people she cares about? Mason was quiet for a while. Then, I like her. Me too. That evening, they watched a basketball game. Pacers versus Miami. Mason explained the plays. Why the defense collapsed. What the point guard should have done differently. Warren didn't understand half of it, but he liked listening to his son talk. Liked hearing him sound like a kid again. During halftime, Mason turned to him. Dad, I'm trying out for the team next fall. Yeah? Yeah, I miss playing. He picked at the couch cushion. I stopped because everything felt, I don't know, wrong. But it doesn't feel wrong anymore. Warren looked at his son. Thought about Mason making his own breakfast back in February. Scrambling eggs because no one else would. Learning to take care of himself at 12 years old because his parents couldn't take care of him. I'm glad, Warren said. Me too. The game came back on. Mason leaned against Warren's shoulder. Hadn't done that since he was maybe 8. Warren didn't move. Didn't want to break the moment. Later, after Mason had gone to bed, Warren sat on the porch in the dark, listened to spring peepers in the drainage ditch down the road, watched Phyllis's porch light click on across the way. His phone buzzed. Text message. Linda's name. Can I talk to Mason tomorrow? Warren stared at the screen, thought about deleting it, blocking her number, making it so she couldn't reach them anymore. But Mason was almost 13, old enough to decide if he wanted to talk to his mother, old enough to set his own boundaries. Warren typed back, "That's up to him, I'll ask." 3 dots appeared, disappeared, no response came. Warren set the phone down, finished his coffee. When he went inside, Mason was in the kitchen getting water. "Your mom wants to talk tomorrow, if you want to." Mason filled his glass, drank half of it. "Okay," he said finally, "but just for a few minutes." "That's fine, you can hang up whenever you want." Okay." Mason rinsed his glass. "Dad, is it bad that I don't miss her much?" Warren thought about how to answer that. Thought about all the ways a person could fail someone they were supposed to love. "No," he said. "It's not bad, it's honest." Mason nodded and went back to bed. Warren stood in the kitchen, looking at the table where they ate dinner now. Just the two of them. Simple meals, grilled cheese, spaghetti, chicken and rice. Nothing fancy. But they ate together. Talked about Mason's day, about what needed fixing around the house. It wasn't the family Warren had planned, but it was the family he had, and it was enough. Late April, evening light stretching long across the yard, Warren and Mason on the porch, Mason doing homework, Warren reading the newspaper. Comfortable silence between them. A cardinal sang from the oak tree, 3 notes, over and over. Mason looked up. "What kind of bird is that?" "Cardinal, male, you can tell by the red." "What's the song mean?" "Marking territory, probably, letting other males know this spot's taken." Warren set the paper down. "Or calling for a mate. Could be either." They listened for a while. The cardinal kept singing. Mason went back to his homework. Math problems, from the look of it. His pencil scratched across the paper. A good sound, Warren thought. The sound of a kid doing normal kid things. Phyllis appeared in her garden, planting something. Tomatoes? Maybe? Or peppers. She worked slow, careful, pressing each plant into the dirt like it mattered, like she had all the time in the world. Warren thought about the past 2 months, the lawyer meetings, the paperwork, the finalization of everything that had come apart in February. It hadn't been easy. Some mornings he woke up and forgot Linda was gone, reached for her side of the bed and found it empty. But then he'd remember the forged signatures, the lies. Brian's smug face, and the emptiness felt less like loss and more like space. Room to breathe. Mason set his pencil down. "Dad? Yeah? You lonely?" The question hung there in the spring air. Warren could have lied. Could have said he was fine, great, never better. But Mason deserved better than lies. "Some," Warren admitted. "But lonely's better than used." Mason thought about that. Is it okay to be lonely? Sometimes. Means you know what you're missing. Warren looked at his son. That's different from settling for less than you deserve. Mason picked up his pencil again, nodded like he understood. The cardinal sang 3 more notes and flew off. Phyllis waved from her garden, didn't call over, didn't intrude, just acknowledged them. Warren waved back. His phone sat on the porch rail, silent. No text from Linda today. Maybe tomorrow, maybe not. Either way, Warren and Mason would be okay. The sun dropped lower. The air turned cool. Mason finished his homework and went inside to start dinner. They were taking turns now, learning together. Tonight was spaghetti. Simple, hard to mess up. Warren stayed on the porch a little longer, listened to the neighborhood settling into evening, Phyllis's radio playing something old through her kitchen window, a truck passing on the county road, the screen door spring creaking as Mason went in and out. Ordinary sounds, ordinary life. 2 months ago, Warren had thought his life was ending, thought he'd lost everything that mattered. But he'd been wrong. He'd lost a wife who'd betrayed him, a house full of lies, the weight of pretending everything was fine. What he'd kept was better, his son, his dignity, his home, really his now, not just on paper, the respect of people who mattered, Phyllis's friendship, Dottie's loyalty, Tom's good work, the knowledge that he'd stood up, that he'd fought, that he'd won, not a loud victory, not the kind that got written about, just a quiet reclaiming of what had always been his. That was enough, more than enough. May brought the kind of mornings Warren had forgotten existed. Warm air, birds raising hell in the trees, the smell of cut grass from somebody's lawn 3 houses down. He met Dottie at the courthouse diner on a Thursday. Their booth, the one in the back corner where she used to sit with her late husband before the divorce, before she learned what Warren had learned, that loyalty didn't guarantee loyalty back. "Coffee?" The waitress already knew the answer. "Please." Dottie slid a folder across the table. "Final paperwork? Brian's restitution payments start next month." You'll get a check quarterly. How much? Not enough to matter financially, but it matters. She stirred cream into her coffee. He's paying 6 people now. 2 more came forward last week. Women from his church in Carmel. Warren shook his head. His church. Predators go where the prey is. Dottie's voice was flat, factual. The voice of someone who'd seen too much human nature through 38 years of county paperwork. You stopped him, Warren. That's what matters. Patricia Brennan stopped him first. I just finished it. And she tried. You succeeded. Dottie closed the folder. There's a difference. The coffee came. Warren wrapped his hands around the mug, felt the heat through the ceramic. How's Mason doing? Dottie asked. Good. Better. Warren thought about his son at the breakfast table this morning, explaining a history project about the Civil War. Animated. Present. He talks to Linda once a week. Polite, but distant. That'll probably stay that way. Kids don't forget. No. Warren took a sip. They don't. Dottie leaned back. You know what I think? I think you did something most men don't do. You put your son first, not your pride, not your comfort. Him. Warren didn't know what to say to that, just nodded. Outside the window, Sheriff Hendricks walked by. Saw them through the glass, raised a hand. Warren waved back. Small towns, Dottie said. Everybody knows everybody's business. Yeah, but they also show up when it matters. She finished her coffee. Don't forget that part. Saturday afternoon, Warren and Mason were in the garage. The lawnmower set disassembled on the workbench, carburetor in pieces, parts laid out in order. See how everything has its place? Warren pointed to each component. You put it back wrong. The whole thing fails. Mason studied the parts. Like trust? Warren paused. Looked at his son. Yeah, like trust. Do you trust anyone now? It was a fair question. Deserved a real answer. Phyllis, Dottie, Sheriff Hendricks. Warren picked up the carburetor float. You. That's enough. What about other people? Other people have to earn it. Warren showed Mason how to clean the jets with carburetor cleaner. Here, gentle. Don't force it. It'll go if you're patient. They worked in silence for a while. Mason's hands moved careful, deliberate, learning the way Warren had learned from his own father 40 years ago, by doing, not talking. The carburetor went back together, piece by piece. Warren guided Mason's hands when they hesitated, let him figure it out when he could. Now we test it. Warren carried the mower outside. You pull the cord. Mason grabbed the starter, pulled once, twice. Third time, the engine caught, purred smooth and steady. I did it. And Mason grinned. First real smile Warren had seen in months. You did. Fixed it right. Warren turned off the mower. See? Fix what's fixable. Replace what's broken. Don't keep running on bad parts. Mason's grin faded into something more thoughtful. Are we still talking about mowers? Maybe not. Dad? Mason sat down on the concrete driveway. I'm glad you didn't leave. Warren sat next to him. Me too. I mean it. I thought you would. In February, when everything was bad, I thought you'd just go. I thought about it. Really? Yeah. There's an exit south of Brownsburg, I-65 to Florida, drove past it 3 times one night. Warren picked at a crack in the driveway. But then I'd think about you, about what it would teach you if I ran. What would it teach me? That when things get hard, you leave. But Warren looked at his son. That's not true. Sometimes you stay, sometimes you fight, even when fighting is harder. Mason nodded slowly. Is that what being a man is? Part of it. Warren stood up, brushed off his jeans. Being a man is knowing what's worth fighting for and what's not. Was Mom worth fighting for? The question landed like a stone. Warren thought about Linda on the couch, phone lit up at 2 a.m. Thought about forged signatures and insurance schemes in 28 years that turned out to be built on sand. Once, maybe, but people change, or you realize they were never who you thought they were. Warren pulled Mason's to his feet. What I fought for was you, this house, my dignity. Those were worth it. Mason wiped his eyes quick. What are we fixing next? Screen door's been squeaking. Cool. Mason headed for the house. Can Phyllis come for dinner after? Already invited her. Evening came soft, the kind of light that made everything look golden and possible. Warren sat on the porch with a book he wasn't reading. Mason was inside doing homework at the kitchen table. Phyllis was in her garden, tying up tomato plants. The cardinal was back in the oak tree. Same one. Probably. Still singing. Warren thought about the past 4 months. February to May. Winter to spring. How much could change in 16 weeks? His marriage had ended. Brian was paying restitution to 6 women. Linda was in Terre Haute, living with her sister, working some job at a call center. Mason talked to her Sundays, 10 minutes, polite, and distant. The house was quieter now, smaller, somehow, with just the two of them. But it was theirs, really theirs. No lies hiding in the corners. No secrets festering under pleasant dinners. Warren had taken early retirement. The county had been generous. Full benefits, no penalties given the circumstances. Turned out, everyone from the county board to the road crew had heard what happened. Had wanted to make sure Warren was taken care of. Small-town justice. Quiet but effective. He was 64 years old, starting over. Most men his age were thinking about grandkids and RV trips and whether to winter in Florida or Arizona. Warren was thinking about teaching his son to drive next year, about fixing the gutters before fall, about whether to plant tomatoes or peppers in the garden spot behind the garage. Small things. Ordinary things? They felt right. The screen door opened. Mason came out with 2 glasses of iced tea, had made it himself, lemon and sugar, the way Warren liked it. Thanks. Warren took a glass. Mason sat on the steps. Dad, next year I'll be in 8th grade. I know. That's weird. Why? Means I'm getting older. You're getting older. Everything's changing. Warren sipped his tea. Some changes are okay. Mason considered that. Yeah, some are. Phyllis waved from her garden. Didn't call over, didn't interrupt. Just acknowledged them and went back to her tomatoes. Warren thought about Phyllis's notebook, about Dottie's detective work, about Sheriff Hendricks offering backup, about Tom Pelham taking his case, about Patricia Brennan finding courage to testify. He'd thought he was alone in February, thought he was the only one who saw what was happening. But he'd been wrong. The whole time, people had been watching, waiting, ready to help when he finally asked. That was small-town life. The gossip could cut you, but the loyalty could save you. Mason finished his tea. You hungry? Always. I'm thinking tacos. I can make them now without burning the shells. Warren smiled. Sounds good. They went inside. The screen door bounced twice before settling. In the kitchen, Mason pulled out ground beef and tortillas, moved her around the space like he belonged there. Because he did. This was his kitchen now, his home. Warren watched his son cook. Thought about all the things Mason had learned in 4 months. How to scramble eggs, how to do laundry, how to speak up when adults were lying, how to forgive without forgetting, how to keep loving a father who'd almost run away. Dad, Mason looked up from the stove. You're staring. Just thinking. About what? About how you've grown up this year. About how proud I am. Warren's throat went tight. About how I almost missed all of it. Mason went quiet, stirred the meat. But you didn't. No, I didn't. They ate tacos at the table. Talked about Mason's history project. About whether the Pacers would make the playoffs. About nothing and everything. After dinner, Warren washed dishes while Mason dried. Simple rhythm. Comfortable. Outside, the sun was setting. The Cardinal sang one last time before settling in for the night. Phyllis's kitchen light came on. Her radio played something low. Big band era, the kind Herb used to love. Warren dried his hands, looked around his kitchen, his house, the life he'd fought for and won. It wasn't perfect. He was lonely sometimes. Woke up at night and felt the emptiness on Linda's side of the bed. Wondered if he'd ever trust anyone that way again. But he had his son, had his dignity. Had people who'd stood by him when standing by him mattered. That was more than some men got. More than he'd had 4 months ago when everything was pretty lies and underneath rot. This was honest. Hard, sometimes, but honest. And honest was enough. Mason put away the last dish. Tomorrow, want to go fishing? Yeah, I'd like that. Cool. I'll dig up worms in the morning. Warren nodded. Watched his son head upstairs to his room. Mason had moved back in there last month. Said the basement couch wasn't comfortable anymore. The house settled around Warren. Quiet but not empty. Peaceful but not silent. He turned off the kitchen light. Stood at the window for a moment, looking out at his yard. At Phyllis's house next door. At the street where he'd lived for 20 years. Tomorrow, they'd go fishing. Next week, Mason had a science test in the fall basketball tryouts. In 8 months, Warren would turn 65, and his full pension would kick in. Life kept moving forward. Day by day, one ordinary moment at a time. And that was exactly how Warren wanted it. The porch boards were warm under Warren's hands. Late May evening, sun dropping behind Phyllis's roof, painting everything gold and gentle. Mason sat beside him, math homework spread out, pencils scratching paper. The sound reminded Warren of his own school days. Different house, different town, same sound of a kid learning. The cardinal called from the oak tree. 3 notes, clear and insistent, saying something important in a language Warren didn't speak but understood anyway. Phyllis's radio played low through her kitchen window. Something old, something familiar. Glenn Miller, maybe. The kind of music that made you think about easier times. Even though times were never really easier, just different. Warren closed his eyes, let the sun warm his face one last time before it disappeared. 40 years he'd worked those roads, kept people safe in the cold and dark, Salt and sand in 16-hour shifts when the ice came. Nobody thanked him much. Didn't matter. He knew what he'd done. Same with this. Nobody'd write songs about a man who kept his dignity, who taught his son that standing up was hard but necessary, who learned the difference between loneliness and being used. But it was done. The house was his. The pension was secure. Mason was healing. The people who mattered had shown up when it counted. Spring had come after all. The Cardinals sang once more. Mason looked up from his homework, smiled at him. Nothing in particular. Just smiled because the evening was nice and the math problem had worked out right. And his father was sitting beside him. Warren opened his eyes, saw Phyllis wave goodnight from her porch, waved back. Tomorrow he'd teach Mason about oil changes. Next week they'd fix the gutters. In the fall, maybe plant some trees. Small things, honest things, the kind that lasted. The screen door closed soft behind them as they went inside. The Cardinals' song faded into evening. That was enough.